Hello, and welcome to the very first episode of the Mental Health Mallee Podcast. I'm Jo Marie, and I'm so glad you're here with me today. Whether you're listening from home, on a walk, or just taking a moment for yourself, thank you for letting me join you. This podcast is about connection, hope, and proactive conversations around mental well-being. My hope is that each episode feels like sitting down with a friend, someone who gets it, someone who's here to share stories and tools that might make things just a little easier for you. Something I found quite interesting is that studies have shown podcasts can enhance social connection by giving us a sense of belonging and community, which is why we're launching this podcast and inviting guests to share their stories with you. And of course, inviting you into those conversations too. Before we dive in, I just want to acknowledge that wherever you are in your well-being journey, whether you're here for yourself or to help others, you're exactly where you need to be. Sometimes we put pressure on ourselves to have it all figured out, to always be the strong one, or always know the right thing to say. The truth is, just showing up, whether it's pressing play on a podcast, taking a deep breath, or offering support to someone in need, is already a step in the right direction. Mental Health Mallee, or MHM, is a community initiative with a proactive approach to mental well-being. We run programs, events, and now this podcast to build resilience, strengthen social connection, and reduce stigma around mental health. Our goal is to make mental well-being something that feels accessible and achievable for everyone, whether it's through our free 4-week mental well-being program, our workshops, or these conversations. MHM is here to help you take small, meaningful steps towards feeling your best. If you're someone who wants to create a mentally healthy environment at home, in the workplace, or in your community, this podcast will give you the tools to do that. Because when we take care of our own well-being, we're also better equipped to support others. Mental well-being isn't just about individual growth. It's about creating cultures where people feel safe, valued, and supported. Something I reflect on quite often is that it's not just about fixing what's wrong. And I think a lot of our focus has gone into fixing what's wrong, at least in a traditional sense. If we think of traditional psychology, we focus on what's wrong. It's also looking at the opposite. What is going right? What is good? What is currently working? Finding joy, building connection, and learning to thrive in our everyday life. Learning to optimize and use our strengths to support us through those challenging times. And it's not to bypass the human experience that we do go through traumas, we do go through illness, we do go through declines in our mental health, we go through grief, we go through suffering, we go through heartbreak. And I think that's what makes this podcast so real, because people are coming on and they are sharing their stories and how these stories have led to them gaining wisdom, gaining resilience, gaining an understanding of themselves in such a big way where they can now go on to empower and support others in their communities and on a global scale as well. Learning about their way of thinking and some tools and strategies that they continue to implement to help with their mental well-being. On a community level, one of my favorite quotes is, instead of pulling people out of the river, we need to start questioning, why are they even falling in the first place? Which gets back to how we're reacting to mental health and how we do need to start moving towards proactive approaches to building mental well-being, which is why this podcast exists, which is why Mental Health Mallee exists. Which leads us to this question: what are some things we can be doing to build good mental well-being for ourselves, for others, for our workplaces, and for the community? And there are so many things we can be doing to build mentally healthy communities that are at our disposal. And something I'm very passionate about is the range of interventions in positive psychology that we can use to do this. And I am mindful of using a very clinical term by saying interventions. So we will unpack this in the podcast. And at a later date, I'd also like to share my story with you as well as to how I got to this place and why this is such a big passion, having come from navigating my own mental health journey and losing loved ones in this space as well. I think it definitely does shift your perspective and gives you this sense of drive and purpose to contribute back to honor the legacy of those that we've lost. I started Mental Health Mallee because I'd seen firsthand the impact that positive mental well-being practices have, not just in my work, but in everyday life. Over the past 3 years, I've worked closely with leaders, workplaces, and community members as part of the Northern Mallee Leaders Program, helping people step into leadership roles and create change. Time and time again, I've seen that mental well-being is at the heart of everything we do. How we show up for ourselves, how we show up for others, and how we show up for our community. Maybe you're listening today because you want to understand your own mental well-being, or maybe you're here because you're in a role where you support others, whether that's as a leader, a coach, a teacher, or a parent. Wherever you are part of this conversation. I'm sharing this not because I have all the answers, but because I believe in the power of conversation and connection. We don't have to go through things alone, and sometimes just hearing someone say, "Hey, I get it," can be the thing that makes all the difference. When we share, we connect. And when we connect, we grow. I hope this podcast can inspire you to explore what's possible in your life and for those around you. This podcast is just one piece of what we do at Mental Health Mallee. Here's what you can look forward to: real stories, conversations with people in our community who have lived experiences with mental health, resilience, and growth, practical tools, simple evidence-based ways to improve your mental well-being and support others, whether that's at work, in relationships, or in daily life. And community connection will highlight leaders, workplaces, and initiatives making a difference. You'll hear from local people like our guest, Rebel Marcus, and his story from refugee to community leader, a story of resilience and leadership, a testament to the strength of the human spirit. Rebel shares resilience is not about falling, it's about how many times you stand back up. His journey of rebuilding his life and giving back to the community will leave you feeling inspired. You'll also meet Matt Ronells, a best-selling author, CEO of Mindful Oz, and one of Australia's leading mental health advocates. Matt shares the greatest gift you can give someone is to make them feel seen, heard, and understood. With powerful lived experience, he has dedicated his life to breaking stigma, driving change, and empowering others to take charge of their mental well-being. Whether you're tuning in to better understand your mental health, support a friend, or create change in your workplace, this podcast is for you. We'd love for you to join us on this journey. You can learn more about Mental Health Mallee and our programs, including the free 4-week mental wellbeing program, at mentalhealthmallee.com. We also host wellbeing events and offer plenty of free resources to help build your mental health. Follow us on social media and subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss an episode. And if something in this episode resonated with you, share it with a friend, colleague, or your team. One of the most powerful things we can do for our mental well-being is to talk about it. If today's episode has sparked something for you, whether for yourself or someone you support, we'd love to hear from you. We've come to the end of our conversation today, which was essentially to welcome you to the Mental Health Mallee podcast and community. Thank you so much for joining me today. Starting this podcast has been a dream, and I'm so excited to grow this space with you. Remember that even small steps can make a big difference when it comes to mental well-being, and you don't have to take those steps alone. Together, we can build a stronger, healthier, and more connected community. If you support others, whether at work, in your family, or in your community, remember that your well-being matters too. We can't pour from an empty cup. We do need to take care of ourselves too. Until next time, take care of yourself and each other. I'll see you soon on the Mental Health Mallee podcast.